Welcome to this flight of the Retail Pilot. I'm Ken Pilot, former CEO and current brand advisor, investor, and board member. I'm thrilled to share with you some of the insights from retail's leaders and legends, as well as my perspective on retail today. This podcast is sponsored by the following. Want to drive more traffic and conversions on your e-commerce site? Brands that use video see 41% more traffic from search engines. And that's just the start. Meet Firework, the leader in AI-powered video commerce. Trusted by brands like L'Oreal and Unilever, Firework turns any page into an immersive, shoppable experience. From pre-recorded long-form content to short-form and everything in between. With Firework, you can easily integrate social media videos into your product pages and run pre-recorded digital showrooms with shoppable content. Plus, Firework offers AI-powered virtual assistants to personalize shopper experience and drive higher conversion. That's why I'm an investor and advisor. Learn more at firework.com. I am honored today to have retail legend Lew Frankfort joining me on the Retail Pilot. Lew is chairman emeritus of Coach, Inc., where he transformed a small leather goods company into a $5 billion global brand during his 35-year tenure. Joining in 1979 and leading as chairman and CEO from 85 to 2014, he was repeatedly recognized by Barron's as one of the 30 most respected CEOs around the world and by Institutional Investor as one of the best CEOs in America. After retiring from Coach, Lew co-founded Benvolio Group, an investment firm focused on early-stage disruptive consumer brands where he mentors and advises senior leaders. Earlier in his career, he spent a decade in New York City government, concluding as commissioner of the Agency for Child Development. A Bronx native, Lew earned degrees from Hunter College and Columbia Business School. He and his wife, Bobby, live in New York City, are devoted to education and the arts, and enjoy their 3 children, 8 grandchildren, and 2 labradoodles. Lew, welcome and great to see you.
Always nice to see you, Ken.
But we really could use your back. I'm a little concerned for the state of New York, but that's a topic for another day. Let's talk about the amazing book, which I had a chance to read and loved it. But what inspired you to write Bagman? And what do you hope readers will take away from your leadership story?
It was actually my children that encouraged me to tell an authentic story that would not only talk about values, management, leadership, building an iconic brand, but the drive that led me to both fear failure and drive for excellence, which led to some depressive episodes over time. And it was not something that was commonly discussed outside my home during those years. But since I formed Benvolio, I've been very open with early stage business founders, other leaders, about the stress that they need to be mindful when they're founding or leading businesses.
The book's subtitle, and we're going to get back to fear in a bit because it was a very important theme to the book, but the book's subtitle is The Improbable Rise of Coach. Having read the book, I would say it was more like the improbable rise of Lew Frankfort. I mean, in 29 years, you took Coach from $6 million in sales to $5 billion. How did your growing up, parents, education, and civil service contribute to this awesome accomplishment?
I would mirror the successes of Coach to the American dream, and I've been very fortunate. I was blessed with loving parents that wanted me to both go to school and live a better life than them. When I joined Coach, I had a vision that Coach, as a microcosm of the best of America, one day could become a democratized luxury brand. There was a growing middle class in the 70s that began to pay attention to brands. And when I looked at Coach, I saw purpose. And when I looked at my life prior in government, I saw purpose, and I led with purpose and fortitude.
I find it interesting growing up in the Bronx, you grew up with some other retail luminaries that include Mickey Drexler, Ralph Lauren, and Calvin Klein, which the four of you sound like the New York Yankees' 1927 Murderers Row. Was there something in the water or the environment that gave rise to you and these other retail legends?
I think that we came of age at a time in America where there was boundless possibilities. There was rapid growth in the middle class. There was encouragement to go to college and to live a life better than our parents. I think we were lucky. We were also fortunate and, of course, worked hard. I think all of us possessed a view of belief in possibilities and imagination. And I'm not sure it was in the fluoride within our water, but I think it's more typical of coming of age in the 1960s.
And similarly, you all shared this sense or this fear of failure. And I think failure impacted each of you differently. But if I had to summarize, I think there was a great degree of motivation that the fear of failure created.
Actually see it in the reverse way. I believe it was my drive for excellence that led to my fear of failure, because the notion of not being successful was untenable. And I'm only, of course, speaking for myself here. I always felt from the time I was in college that I would lead with values and purpose. And I think part of it is growing up in the 60s and being optimistic that my generation could lead the world into a better place. And wherever I traveled, I did it with heart and enthusiasm. But again, coming from where I came from, I think the fear of failure was a split coin with my drive for excellence. One side, fear of failure, the second, drive for excellence.
You came into this business almost out of luck. I mean, as I recall in the book, a friend of yours told you about Coach. You had a couple of interviews, and there was a third interview which you really didn't want to take, but Bobby, your wife, insisted that you go. So I got to give Bobby a lot of credit for getting you to go to that interview. But you met with the founder and you joined the company. And you joined the company really without retail background. This was not your forte. How did you get involved with I understand some of the management parts of the business because you managed a pretty big group when you were working in the New York City government, but product, and you talk about product as hero. I mean, that had to be a blind spot. How did you really hone your skills around product, or what did you do to develop the product excellence that Coach became known for?
I've always been a curious person from my beginning days. And when I was in city government, I focused on my clients. And my clients were children and families from underprivileged families who were getting support services, daycare, family counseling, and the alike, all community-based. And the only way I could serve a community-based organization was to really understand their needs, wants, and particularly their unmet needs. So during my interviewing phase, prior to joining Coach, instead of clients, I went to customers. And the way I went to customers was by pretending to be a freelance Business Week reporter. And I interviewed merchants and buyers and actually visited a small specialty store on the west side of Manhattan. And during the course of these discussions, I learned a great deal about customers who bought Coach. First, I learned it was a great product. The buyers and merchants themselves said it's a natural leather product. It develops a patina, burnishes over time, and there's a great deal of loyalty. I also learned the product was oversold because the founder had 46 weeks producing the same number of bags regardless of what the demand was. And he was very comfortable running out of product around Thanksgiving. And that was his philosophy was, let's be oversold. Last interview led me to hear the words cult, that there was a cult following. And being a product of the 60s, I was really curious about how people could really love their bags. And with that curiosity, I joined Coach and I leaned into trying to understand who our customers were, who they weren't, if they were buying Coach, why were they buying Coach, what was our competition. And in the course of my early days, I also studied globally brands that I thought I could learn things from. One such brand was Louis Vuitton, which was a small French brand at the time with about 20 stores. And I thought to myself, if Coach could control its own destiny, we would do a better job in terms of even stronger bonds with consumers. So in my early days, I started a catalog business. And then in my second year at Coach, we opened our first retail store in 1981 on Madison Avenue. So being consumer centric gave me a real excellent base from which to build out my other skills. And when we talk about product, I learned if consumers are bright, of course, and rather than being a design-led brand, we were a consumer-led brand. And we began to interview consumers through focus groups, outside our stores, and the like. And we broadened our product assortment to cover different personalities, different needs, different seasons.
It's funny, Lou, you talk about this obsession with the consumer. And this is something that you had throughout your years at Coach, and something that you really wanted those who worked for you to fully understand and embrace, especially those on the creative side of the business. Having worked at a few different companies in retail, I don't think I ever saw the obsession that you describe with understanding the customer, what really makes them tick, what draws them to a brand, the logic behind all of this. I found that to be so motivating because it was really an obsession with understanding the possibilities by knowing the customer. And then to that, you really combined the importance of product. And I believe in the book, whether or not you coined the phrase, I know you embraced it, but magic plus logic as being a core philosophy of yours and throughout Coach. Discuss how your logical and methodical approach led you to the best design talent in the industry.
We actually coined in 1988 the term magic and logic, not to suggest it did not exist before, but we, for the first time, paired it with Coach. And we did that in anticipation of a meeting with a leading Japanese department store by the name of Mitsukoshi. We had some green shoots already with Japanese consumers through duty free and visiting in the United States. And we were looking for a partner who could really understand what Coach could be. And we talked about the nature of Coach being an American brand, a New York brand, and that it embodied the spirit and energy and resourcefulness of Americans. And we put on the cover of the presentation blend of magic and logic in Japanese. And the chairman never got past the cover. He loved the notion of magic and logic. And I went on during the presentation to explain what we meant by magic and what we meant by logic. And by that time, in 1988, my team and I were really focused on a blend of both. And so when we talk about magic and we talk about belief in possibilities, so whether it's blue sky, imagination, it's being bold in what you're thinking. If you don't have a vision for what can be, you will never get there. And from the very beginning days, I had a view that we could become the best of America, a microcosm of the diversity and richness of America, that we could give people, our growing middle class, women and men, an opportunity to get a great product at a fair price. So when we talk about magic, we think about curiosity. We think about imagination. We think about instincts. When we talk about logic, we think about data analytics, consumer insights, collaboration, and a mindset for the greater good. So when we talk about recruiting talent, I was always focused on people who had belief in possibilities, people who were optimistic, people who thought that if they worked hard and they reached out to dream about what could be and could also simultaneously understand what it takes to execute, which, as you well know, is not always easy, we could do something special in the United States. So I really felt from the beginning that Coach one day could become part of the American landscape.
Lew, you did such an amazing job really building your team. And this is a good segue into this discussion based on what you just mentioned. You built an amazing team. And one of the things that I really appreciate, having had an opportunity and a failed opportunity to be part of your amazing team, which is a long and disappointing story for me, because Lew, you were kind enough at one point to ask me if I'd like to join your team. The timing just wasn't perfect for me, and I couldn't. Regret that to this day.
I regret you not joining me too. We would have had a blast together.
With that being said, you built an amazing team, but one thing I do know, and this stems from your curiosity, you've been known to be one of the best interviewers and really able to exact a lot of information from that interview. Do you have a favorite interview question? Is there a go-to interview question that really helps reveal most about a candidate?
It's not a single question. It's a method of inquiry that allows me to, in a much shorter time, never completely accurately, get a sense of someone's values, skill set, and ability to be a cultural fit. And I take time to try to understand the total person. And so I do talk about it in memoir, and I refer to it as an immersive interviewing process. It does also include a screen where I ask people to rate themselves on a 1 to 10 scale and across 70 or 80 different areas. And I look for clusters. I look for outliers. If someone says they're very curious, I might probe, demonstrate where that's curious. I probe to try to understand people's self-awareness, their emotional intelligence, their values in terms of whether they will be collaborative, if they think they're the smartest person in the room, I have no interest in them joining us. Coach is a learning organization, and we're looking and continue to look under Todd Kahn's leadership today for bright people who are optimistic, strong work ethics, who want to lead with a purpose and are looking to have an opportunity to join something where they can grow and believe in it. We coined the term way back, performance family, which means we wanted to recruit people with good values and treat them the way we would want to be treated if we were in their situation. We also built our culture around treating customers the way we would like to be treated if we were in stores. And that reverberates throughout the world today. And it's one of the distinctions that Coach has with from many other companies.
I can't tell you how much I appreciated this portion of the book. And as a student of retail, I couldn't recommend more for those out there to really understand what it takes to hire the right people. And it sounds almost cliche, but when you read Bagman, you will understand how much time Lew and his team really put into the interview process and how they discussed the candidate and really went on to make many right decisions around those who worked at Coach. And I think the success really speaks to that.
Yes, it's not only the hiring process, it's the onboarding process. It's the path that an employee takes once they join Coach. And from the very beginning days, we wanted to create an environment where people would understand that it was okay to be vulnerable. It was better to say, I don't know, than wing it. It was better to seek out assistance when needed. And from the late 80s on, we employed executive coaching. And by the time we went public, virtually every senior leader had an executive coach within the first 12 months of them being here. And human capital is critical to any business. And today, our values are not only embedded in the culture, but it's embedded in the way in which Coach is perceived as a brand. Many of the perceptions of Coach as a great product, as a product that's authentic and real and meets people's needs, are the way in which the team feels they're purposed to achieve that.
Lew, I want to shift a little bit and talk about one of the many areas that obviously you impacted while you were a Coach, but you were really the leader of Omni before Omni was Omni. We talk about the omni-channel business today, but Lew, you were doing things in Omni that predated the term. For example, not only were you building out stores, you had a catalog, you had retail stores, you had off-price stores, and weren't afraid to lean into off-price as you found out that it was clearly a different channel. You had wholesale partners. You got into e-commerce very early, and you grew internationally. Share with us a little more your philosophy around this approach, touching on so many different opportunities. Was the board pushing you, or did you just really sense that there was that much more business out there as you were leading the company?
Being consumer centric led me to a process by which we systematically try to grok consumers, really understand where they were, where they had been, and where they're traveling. And understanding where consumers were, where they are today, and where they're traveling gave us the opportunity to be there when they got there 2, 3, 5 years later. So we looked at trends, and it may not have been color trends, but it was trends of where and how consumers thought about brands, how they thought about products. It was very clear to us in 1980 when department stores were 30% of sales, retail sales in the United States, that it was going to be materially less in 1990 because their consumer was getting older 11 months a year. And when you build a brand or a business, you really need to understand the customer journey, in the single customer journey and the overall customer journey. And you need to be extremely mindful of focusing on the earlier demographics and psychographics of consumers that you're bringing into your franchise. Otherwise, you're not going to stay relevant. The second thing was that we never felt complacent. So when we were successful, in the early days, my team said we didn't celebrate enough. So we added celebrations, but the next day we went back to work and went to climb a higher mountain.
Back to the team aspect of this, the team that you built really was made up of a number of superstars that I've gotten to know over time. Dave DiMattei came in and really helped reposition the stores, which you allowed him to do. You brought in merchants. Mike Tucci came in ran the retail for you later on. You had Reed Krakoff developing some of the greatest product really known to accessories at the time. Ian came in and opened up international stores for you. You had Keith. I mean, you really had just a tremendous team that helped you go after this omni experience. But I think as a leader, it's finding those people and letting them do what they do best to drive the results that you want. Was that an easy transition as you grew from the $6 million company where you were really overseeing everything from sourcing to retail to catalog to customer interactions to a team that was out there bringing this brand global?
It is a process, both for me and for others. And part of the interviewing process was to understand someone's ability and willingness to collaborate with others. Because you can bring in great people, but if they work in a siloed sense, you're never going to get the best out of the community of leaders that you have. So having executive coaches, having people come in and understand that they need to be concerned with the greater good, not just their own area, having metrics that they're held accountable to, not only in their areas, but company-wide, is also very critical. Having coaches and feedback sessions. So when we talk about logic, collaboration is learned. It's not natural. It is learned. And some of us learn it in team sports when we're kids. Some of us don't ever learn it. And some of us unlearn it when we go to competitive schools. But it takes a village to build something that can last. And it takes a culture that is consistent in the way it behaves towards its employees, its customers, its investors, to be able to realize its potential.
The collaboration that you reference, I do find it very interesting that you were able to create such good collaboration between design and the business side of the business. I often have seen this to be a great challenge where the designers do what they want and the operational, the business people react to it. Sounds like, from reading the book and as you describe it, that you really had them work closely together and there was a mutual respect and each team supported the other.
That's very true. And over time, as we became a global company with many channels of business, we developed empowered merchandising teams, or what might be called buying teams, who worked in collaboration with the creative teams. We prepared briefs. It wasn't the designers who did the briefs. It was the merchants who did the briefs, because the merchants were really responsible to both be right and left brain, understanding where the consumer was and where she and he were traveling, and to understand where our voids were, and to also understand where opportunities lie in the future.
Lew, before we shift on to the next area, I just want to ask you about, were there any major disappointments or learning moments that you had at Coach that actually maybe changed the trajectory of how you managed the business going forward?
That's a great question. There were multiple moments. I'll cite a moment in the mid-1990s when we were a division of Sara Lee. It became clear to me at that point that for Coach to realize its potential, we needed to be on our own so that we would not be held within the guardrails of a very large holding company, that we could recruit and motivate talent as we saw fit. And at that point, I realized that to achieve its destiny, we needed to be an independent company. And through a set of circumstances, Sarah Lee ultimately agreed to give us our freedom.
And from there, and that was after you took the company public, where was that in that process?
I will tell you, actually, in 1997, I returned to Coach almost full time from being a group officer at Sarah Lee, where Coach was one of my responsibilities. It became clear when I was working across multiple brands that was not my best destiny. I did not like to lead CEOs within a holding company. I wanted to really work to build a brand, continue to go high, low, left, right. And I navigated my way back to Coach, and I received an offer from Burberry to become CEO at 2x plus the compensation I was earning, and with a variety of very compelling incentives. While I was wrestling with the idea of leaving my beloved Coach and taking a job across the Atlantic with young children, Sarah Lee gained wind that I might leave, and they concluded there was no Coach without Lew, and asked me what the conditions would be for me to stay. And that led to a set of intense conversations over a handful of days, and we agreed that if I could get Sarah Lee $1 billion for Coach, they would give us our freedom. And that took about 2 years to do. I also set certain conditions on Sarah Lee for those 2 years that would give me the freedom to recruit the talent that I needed, pay them what was required, and march to a very different vision than Sarah Lee had.
Lew, what would you say was the most enduring business and life lesson from your time at Coach?
Leading with purpose and authenticity. I think too many leaders get caught up with how important they are when they're successful. I have a deep caring for employees and customers. It's just natural to me. And I think leading with purpose and authenticity is critical, and leading with humility and vulnerability is the way I led. And I believe if you want to have a created village or a community that's really caring, you need to demonstrate the values and behaviors that you expect your employees to have. If you don't, they may still perform very well, but they will not be looking out for the greater enterprise in the way they would otherwise.
Take a quick break for a word from our sponsor. Looking for a 3PL that's truly next level? Cart.com is a 3PL on steroids with nationwide distribution centers and the most advanced AI-driven software solutions from WMS and OMS to TMS, all designed to streamline your entire delivery process. With Cart.com, you get a fully integrated commerce platform that unifies your operations, data, and customer experience all in one place. Their platform combines physical distribution with cutting-edge AI, empowering retailers to scale faster and more efficiently. Whether you're D2C, B2B, or omnichannel, Cart.com connects your tech stack, simplifies your logistics, and powers your growth from click to customer, enabling distribution for Janie and Jack, Portland Leather Goods, Tom's, and many more. Cart.com. Today's podcast is also brought to you by Simulate. Search has changed. Today's shoppers don't type keywords, they ask questions, full sentences, 35 words on average. Legacy search engines can't keep up, but Simulate can. Simulate's the first AI-native commerce platform powered by Commerce GPT, built to understand intent, not just match words. That means smarter results, fewer dead ends, and higher conversions automatically. Visit Simulate AI, that's with a C, Simulate with a C, to see how context-aware AI is reshaping commerce in-store and online. And we're back. Lew, let's shift and talk a little bit more about Benvolio and your current work. I've had the opportunity to do some work with you in this space, bringing in a couple of ideas here and there, but I really want to hear more about your investment philosophy and focus. Tell us about Benvolio. First of all, the name, where did that come from? What types of consumer brands or founders interest you most as you look for new investments?
Benvolio is the name of our late Labradoodle. We have 3 clones, actually, from Benvolio that are shared by me and my family, among many other dogs that are part of our family. When I was contemplating leaving Coach, my son Sam, who you know well, and I began to talk about working together in my next chapter. And Ernest, my son-in-law at the time, joined us. And what we decided we would do was focus on early stage disruptive consumer-facing brands, early stage disruptive consumer-facing brands. And as you know, when you develop a mission statement, every word means certain things. And we've stayed very true to that premise. Actually, before we formed Benvolio, as I was planning to leave Coach, which was a 5+ year transition period, with the knowledge of the board, I began to make investments in complementary areas. And one early investment we made was in body armor. And the founders had come to us looking for strategic capital, and we're looking for people who could help them in branding, in understanding the consumer, in storytelling, marketing, and the alike. And we loved the concept. The concept was to offer a healthy alternative in the sports drink category to Gatorade and Powerade. The industry was mature. It was flat. There was one dominant player, and that was Gatorade with 80% market share. Very unhealthy drink. The founders developed a great drink. 12 years later or so, we were about 12 or 14% of a growing sports drink market, where Gatorade took many years, but they started to introduce a healthier version. Our sales were over $1 billion. We had about 15% market share, and we were able to sell the business to Coca-Cola. And that's an example of finding a niche in the area. It was disruptive, it was consumer-facing, and it was a great product. It's hard for us to invest in something we don't believe in. So the way our values work, when we talk about purpose, we have to believe that we're solving a problem or fulfilling a niche or moving into a new area, even if the population we're targeted doesn't understand that they need it. But we can see that if with the right storytelling, the right product, the right marketing strategies, that we can insinuate ourselves as an alternative, we were attracted to those types of investments.
So that sounds like an amazing exit for you. Share with us an exit that wasn't as good as that one.
I'm going to go to the other extreme. There was a fitness concept that we got very enthusiastic about. It's a cycling concept, and we invested. And over time, we saw the opportunities were so large that we brought in other investors and we took control of the business. And I overestimated my ability to win the hearts and minds of an existing ownership structure that had different values than me, and made some mistakes also in personnel. And we ultimately failed in that business.
I think one of the challenges that certainly I've learned investing in early stage companies is, unfortunately, the losers tend to outweigh the winners, but the winners can certainly outweigh the investment of any of the losers that you make over time. What would you say, Lew, is the next big opportunity or disruption in the consumer sector that you see?
I believe the biggest opportunity is in experiential retail. And when we think about Gen Z, we think about a generation that is both value driven and live within a culture where the societal trends remind me actually of the 60s, in that Gen Z are not satisfied with the status quo. They are concerned with the environment. They're concerned with climate. They're concerned with sustainability. They have concerns that perhaps their parents and grandparents did not have. And that is creating, in many ways, a revolution in this country in terms of values and the alike. So Gen Z, when they want to buy something, they want to buy it now. They are channel agnostic. And whether they see something on YouTube or TikTok or in the store, they want to buy it now. They also are much more willing to buy high-low. They're looking for sustained value. They don't have a large appetite for the high luxury brands or even luxury brands. They're looking for authenticity. And Coach, of course, is in that sweet spot.
Is there a recent investment that reflects that Benvolio has made, or is that something that you are looking for that fits that description?
Well, we've made several investments focused on health and wellness, which is a trend that both Gen Z and millennials are very active in. And one such investment is a supplement that's an alternative to omega-3 called Fatty 15. And that business is really resonating extremely well. Two former Navy scientists who were working with dolphins for 15 years developed a supplement from seaweed that they have gone through many independent clinical studies and see great benefit. And the business is growing like a weed. That's an example in health and wellness space. I do want to go back to your earlier comment. We actually have a very broad and diversified portfolio, and we have perhaps 70 or 80 different investments, of which only 10 or 15 we're active in. The others tend to be in areas outside of our expertise, such as AI, as an example, or what we might call platform businesses that to improve efficiencies and the alike.
We did do one deal together, like recall bringing in Predict Spring, which was a point of sale solution that had a positive exit selling to Salesforce. So we did get to work together over time, Lew. So that's exciting. And whenever I hear of a good idea, we're trying to.
Thank you. This year's ahead.
Yeah, good. I'm glad. What advice would you give to founders? I mean, you meet with so many, you have such experience, and these founders are trying, they're scrambling, they're scrappy, they're mostly entrepreneurial, but how can you help them? And basically, why would they want Benvolio as a partner?
Okay. The first, a good idea does not translate into a good business. It takes a lot more. And what we try to do when we meet with founders is understand, to what extent do they understand first? Do they understand product, consumer, competitive set, size of the opportunity, barriers to entry? So there are certain guidelines by which we look at businesses, and we encourage founders who might only look at product and brand, but not supply chain or size of market or competitive pressures that exist in the category, to look more, have a 360 view. So I encourage founders to really have a 360 view of the entire ecosystem that they're building. Second, I encourage founders to be honest with themselves about what they think their superpowers are and where they need to be complemented. And to the extent that they need to be complemented, and we all need to be complemented, if we're active in the business, already investors or thinking about investors and investing, and we discuss with them their team, their recruitment philosophy, and the like, we lean into trying to understand whether they have a group of individuals, first, that can be a team. Second, that they can work effectively as a team, that they have shared values and a shared belief in what the future looks like. And those are table stakes, in my view. Even with all of that, you're not going to always be successful.
Lew, one of the most important things I think a leader can do is plan for the future of the company. You talked about in the book, you planned your exit at Coach close to a 5-year period. Talk to us a little bit about your planning and what you did to ensure that the company transitioned from the Lew Frankfort time to the next generation of leadership at Coach.
First, I aligned with my board as to the type of individual we would need, what their skill sets would be, what their values would be, what their experience would require. And we went through a process with an outside search firm to identify both internal candidates and outside candidates. And we landed ultimately on an internal candidate. And we worked with that candidate over a handful of years to prepare that person to succeed me. And with that, I retired from the company. Prior to my retirement from the company, Reed Krakoff also left the company, and we recruited Stuart Vivas from where he was working in Europe from an LVMH company to Coach. So I did want to make sure that all of the creative leadership function was in good hands.
And just one note on that, I do recall that hiring Stuart was like this covert operation. He had to be smuggled out of Europe on a secret flight to get him to the United States so they wouldn't catch wind that he was interviewing. That's true, right? That's not just street myth.
No, it's, and we actually had a plane waiting for Stuart, which flew at night. And the next morning, we announced his appointment. And of course, Coach was sued by LVMH, and the lawsuit went nowhere. Unfortunately, Stuart was not even able to return to get his belongings out of his office. Someone had to fetch them. And I recognize that you try to keep scarce talent, and we were mindful that LVMH would not be pleased if they were going to what they called the McDonald's of luxury, which was Coach.
Love that. Lou, let's go to the last part of the podcast. Let's go to rapid fire. I've got a few questions for you.
Sure.
What brand other than Coach do you admire most?
I admire Laura Piana, Brunello Cucinelli. I admire Nike, to name three.
Favorite family vacation spot?
Our home in the Hamptons.
Most influential person in your life?
Bobby, my wife.
Favorite streamed show?
The one that comes to mind, top of mind, is Breaking Bad.
And what's your go-to to completely unwind? That's legal.
Well, recreational drugs are illegal today too, and I have several ways to unwind: meditation, exercise, massage, acupuncture, to name several.
And with that, we'll land this flight of the Retail Pilot. Lew Frankfort, what a pleasure to have you on. It's always great to see you. Congratulations on an amazing run and career at Coach, your success there, the Benvolio Group, your family. And I'm so thankful for our friendship.
I feel the same way, and I really enjoyed the time with you, Ken.
Thanks for tuning in to this week's flight of the Retail Pilot. And please give us a review on your favorite podcast platform.